Well, you win some and you lose some. And the Bruins finally suffered some major losses to the class of 2026 recruiting, but it wasn't all bad this week.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for being an everydayer, and welcome back. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, what we're talking about today is all UCLA recruiting, the good, the bad, the in-between. What happened for UCLA? Well, the end of June finally spelled a little dark cloud. Not a bad cloud that's going to completely destroy the class of 26, but enough that took what was a dominant, very dominant cycle for DeShaun Foster and kind of peel back some of the good sunshine that was all over this 26 recruiting cycle that saw UCLA peak as high as number 8. They peaked as high as number 8, number 7, depending on the recruiting analysts and outlets you look at. UCLA was in the top 10. Now they've stumbled, if you will, to the top 15, top 16, which is still a major success for DeShaun Foster, and the Bruins could still have an outside chance to get to the top 10. But the fact that they rose within the top 10 for a week's time or so was a spectacular victory for DeShaun Foster. Now let's get down to the bad. UCLA had 2 decommitments and saw a very promising quarterback prospect in the class of 26 commit elsewhere when it was between UCLA and Arizona. Let's start with the decommitments. Something that was probably leaning this way, it was the Pula Twins, some of the longest committed Bruins since September of 2024. It was reported by Blair and Jula of 24/7 Sports that, hey, these kids, they're going and visiting other places. I think the Pula Twins from the state of Utah had been on an official visit to the University of Utah fairly recently. And with them going on official visits, if you saw from their social media account, you saw UCLA's continual recruitment of receivers in the class of 26, including from the state of Florida, 2 in-state receiver commits, 3 or so from California, a couple from the state of Florida. You're like, well, Burl Tolaire III, the new UCLA receivers coach, is still going after these guys. While the Pula Twins weren't officially recruited by UCLA's receiver coach to UCLA, you wonder if that made a difference. If it was like, okay, these kids are committed, but there's a different staff, there's something different at play, maybe they're going elsewhere. Because Jerron Pula is the higher rated of the 2 twins with Kennan, that, maybe they want to stay in-house. Maybe they're going to go somewhere else. Who knows? But when they kept going on visits, and then you saw UCLA kept bringing in receivers, it felt like it was only a matter of time before UCLA saw those 2 decommit, which is what happened. All right, you wish them the best. It happens. There's already been quite a few flips and decommits, and will be more, helping UCLA, hurting UCLA, helping everybody and hurting everybody in this upcoming recruiting cycle that should be the first one where kids have a greater idea at what the revenue sharing model will look like. Barring lawsuits, barring everything, what can you get in terms of an NIL commitment, which is supposed to be monitored a little bit more, and what can you get out of a revenue sharing opportunity with these schools coming forward? And for now, UCLA loses the Pula Twins, and with those 2 decommitments, that brought UCLA from top 10 closer to top 15, hovering in the top 20, which is still a major success, a major landmark for DeShaun Foster from where they were in early May to now heading into July of 2025. Next year's recruiting class is still a major success. It was great to live in the top 10 for a moment. Maybe not as volatile, or maybe it is so more than college basketball rankings or some part of the college football top 25 when they rank teams. Yet UCLA finally suffered a little backtrack. And still, this is what UCLA has listed as a receiver commit in the class of 2026. All right. You've got Xavier Warren from the state of Texas, from Georgetown, Texas. You've got Kenneth Moore from Stockton, California, a couple of 3-star receivers. You keep going down. You got Jonas Smith from Rancho Santa Margarita. You keep cruising down. Xavier Stinson from the state of Florida. And you go all the way down to the bottom. And UCLA has Santana Carlos, a potential slot, who Brian Smith, who joined me in the last Locked On UCLA episode, says, hey, these are rising kids those couple of in Florida, state of Florida commits that went to UCLA. So Santana Carlos, Stinson could be guys that while you see all the accolades going to someone like Jerron Pula, who Greg Big at 24/7 Sports has written, there's some good potential that he plays well at the next level and, projecting, all right, has the type of physical build that could find himself at a professional level if that works. That's somebody you don't really want to miss out on if he's that guaranteed of a maybe can't miss prospect. In the end, UCLA's built this class on depth, and I think they won't be missing, and you can go find talented receivers just about anywhere in the country, and that's where UCLA has. So you wish the best to the Pula brothers. The interesting thing is, on the heels of that was a big decision on Friday, June 27th. It was a Friday night decision, a big commitment day for quite a few across the country. Oscar Rios, a local SoCal kid who had once committed to Purdue, had a live commitment where he was choosing between UCLA and Arizona. After a long commitment, the Bruins were sitting there like, okay, we're in on this. Now UCLA has Nico for potentially 3 more years of eligibility. There is very slim chance that Nico plays 3 years at UCLA in a Bruin uniform. I think it's very slim that you see him for more than 2 years. And if you see him for more than 1 year, I think that's a blessing for what UCLA got at the quarterback position. And in addition, Nico's transfer and commitment to UCLA all but solidified this in my mind for Arizona. That's not necessarily what that's going to be come out and said. But if you look at what happened in the spring transfer portal window, you see Nico come in. You saw Pierce Clarkson come in. You have the transfer, more like the official signing of Madden Imaleava, the younger brother of Nico, who is a class of 25, who will most likely redshirt and then would almost be a freshman standing with Oscar Rios next year, because Rios is just a rising senior into his class of 26. You'd be battling for reps with 3 to 4 guys just for your freshman year, where you look at Arizona's Brett Brennan squad, you got Noah Fafita. He's not going to be around by the time Rios is there, all right? He's not going to be competing for reps with multiple guys who still have multiple years of eligibility, right? There's still Luke Duncan. You have Clarkson. UCLA will have Madden to contend with. All with Nico having eligibility on top of this, whatever that cloud looks like. And with them hailing from the same area, right, from either playing at Warren or Downey, those are schools in the same neighborhood. He probably knows the situation. Rios does. All right, what's the situation looking like at UCLA? What's a crowded quarterback room? For Arizona, you go get Rios. They have their highest rated prospect, or one of their highest rated prospects in the Brett Brennan era, right? Just their second ever 4-star in his second year. First 4-star of their class of 26. So where he could be the cream of the crop for that class heading to Tucson, he would be stuck in a crowded room. And where I think he could potentially thrive, you're going to get some immediate opportunity at Arizona, where I still think he could get that at UCLA, could have gotten that, but it would be a lot, tougher. Not that that takes anything away from his decision, says anything about his character, but if you're thinking from a smart decision standpoint, you're like, hey, I want to go start. And with the transfer portal wide open as it is right now until something changes with 1 to 2 year contracts for these players at the college level, why not go start right away, play, make a little money, which is what's going to happen in college, and then he could transfer anyways. In my mind, this is not just insider information, just a thought out there. This is a guy who could play well if Arizona doesn't play well with Brett Brennan in this next year or so. And then Rios is looking to transfer, and they're like, all right, we're going to get rid of this coach. UCLA is looking cool. And they're like, all right, we've had a year or two of Nico. We need a new quarterback. That could be a relationship that resumes with Rios saying, hey, I'm going to come back home and play for a junior year or a sophomore year, if that's what happens, right? We saw Dante Moore come to UCLA, still ended up at Oregon, and he's in his second year with that program. So there's still situations where maybe Rios, in the long run, could be a Bruin. I'm not sure what his mindset's at. That's just something to put out there. But he makes his decision. And if you're thinking, all right, from a play now standpoint, from what could help me in my career currently to the future, to having not to deal with the whatever could be with the Imaleava drama, right? That's just what comes with the Nico and Madden package. You brought in 1, you bring in 2. That's the current and the future quarterback situation for the future. And you're like, all right, that's cool, but it doesn't help you go recruit a coveted prospect in your backyard for the class of 26. And that's where UCLA lost out, in my perspective. So the Bruins losing 2 coveted prospects, losing out on a recruitment battle with Arizona, where I think in most cases they probably win, just not this year, because UCLA went with the win now / maybe set up their future quarterback situation. So they better hope that they're either going to go after somebody in the class of 27, Nico stays for 2 years, or Madden / Pierce Clarkson or whoever's in that quarterback room is ready to go right away. That's the situation at the moment. So it does, hurt the class. If they got Oscar Rios, UCLA would still be in, if not close to the top 10 once again. Not getting him hurts the numbers, but it's okay. And you wish the best to all these kids going elsewhere and who committed elsewhere. They made the best decisions for themselves, but the Bruins are still set up for 2025 and the future. Whether that's the right plan, whether that's going to actually come all the way through to fruition, we'll see. Speaking of we'll see, UCLA does have some talent coming from out of state in this last weekend, last part of June commit. We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. Have you ever decided last minute, let's go to a ball game? Yo, fam, let's go to the ball game today. You call your friends, you call your family, and like, all right, it's game day. And you're like, wait a minute, I want to be there. The weather's not going to be as hot to go to this baseball game. And you're like, wow, tickets kind of cheap. And you want to be there. And it's like, wait a minute, that's where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to get last minute tickets, and there's no stress. You can have money that you save on the tickets, splurge on the food, the drinks, the merch, and maybe like, wait a minute, let's get a bigger group. You go from 1 to 2, and next thing you know, you got like 8 people coming with you. But Game Time, they can make it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple, and prices in the app actually drop closer when you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. And think about this. Game Time, I've had tickets to a game where I'm like, all right, I got a group going. And then a bigger group wants to go. And you're like, how am I going to get seats in the same section that I've already got tickets with a similar price value? Well, Game Time's helped me out. I'm like, wait a minute, close, good seat views. Wait a minute, this is within the same row or two. Game Time makes it easy in the click of a button. And they're the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB. That makes browsing the app easy for upcoming MLB games. Like, hey, look, the Dodgers playing the White Sox coming up soon, or any of their home games, which are tough to get into. Game Time helps take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Cruising on into this final segment of Locked On UCLA, we're talking more recruiting. And let's talk about the good news, right? I'm a bad news first guy, and then you wrap it up with the good news. Let's get that in there. UCLA did win a recruiting battle this week. It was between the University of Utah. It was a battle between potentially Colorado. Toray Davis coming to UCLA, another class of 26 commit, bringing that total back up to 21, keeping UCLA firmly in the top 20, closer in the top 20, top 15, and still a very outside chance to get back into the top 10. What UCLA has now is commitments from the state of Florida, 4, 2 state of Colorado commits, 2 Hawaii commits, 2 Washington commits, a Tennessee commit, a Texas commit, and 9 state of California commits. All right, 7 of which from SoCal, 2 of which are in Northern California. So from my count, that's about 7 to 8 different regions. All right, if you include states and regions, if you split California into 2 recruiting sections. So UCLA has expanded their reach. All right, the big Florida recruiting haul, which could grow, maybe there's a last second push for more, between offensive linemen, receivers. I've already talked about that with Brian Smith. So if you missed the last Locked On UCLA episode, you're going to want to go back and listen to that, where I've talked to Brian Smith at least 2 or 3 times now on my show, on his show, with what UCLA has been growing and surprising a lot of folks in Southern California and in the state of Florida as one of the better teams recruiting the state of Florida, even in SEC territory, ACC territory, with those powerhouse schools losing out to some UCLA opportunities. Great. Colorado. UCLA is trying to get in on some of the best recruits in the state of Colorado, right? That's Deion Sanders' territory. That's Coach Prime's territory, and UCLA's jumping in. Now, is it a full-out recruiting effort for Toray Davis? Who knows? But his father, Elton Davis, played at the University of Colorado. So you're thinking, all right, Coach Prime would have an inside, a hometown kid, if you want to stay with Colorado, seeing the hype that Coach Prime brings. You would think, okay, that would maybe be an opportunity for a guy who's one of the top-rated recruits in the state of Colorado, who's one of the more athletic kids that can play multiple spots, but for UCLA was recruited by Gabe Lynn at the safety position, according to 24/7 Sports. And their write-up, UCLA, they're building. And Coach Meat, with what he's done in the transfer portal, in the class of 25, and in this class of 26, has brought in quite a haul since he's been hired and brought back to UCLA as the head DB's coach. And with Lynn leading the safeties charge to help bring in Davis, you're like, okay, maybe he's brought home from his hometown back to UCLA. But the funny thing is, his father, Toray, Elton's played for Colorado when Rick Neuhaus was the coach. And obviously, Neuhaus was the UCLA guy at heart, and whose son is on the UCLA coaching staff? That's right, that's Jerry. Not sure how those connections played out, but in the end, UCLA was batting Colorado, Utah, a couple of Big 12 schools. So the Bruins are still winning battles. This is where Davis comes in. Top 20 athletes in the class of 2026. Another 3-star, and can play potentially on either side of the ball. So a UCLA team that's now with 5 receiver commits at the moment. UCLA trying to bring him in at safety. So he was probably weighing opportunities. Do I want to be this? Do I want to be a receiver? Do I want to go play DB or safety? Or what is he going to transition to? Maybe he's one of those guys where you can bring him in and you play him a couple of plays at receiver. Not sure after Colorado's star two-way player and Travis Hunter just won the Heisman Trophy that I'm going to come out and say this is going to be the next two-way star. No, but any type of opportunity means, hey, there's a versatility there that isn't necessarily for everybody, right? You see Micah Champ-Smith from Florida. He played both ways on the O-line and D-line in high school, which is remarkable. Maybe there's a chance he plays two ways. You see UCLA recruiting multi-sport athletes, which coaches truly love. You see UCLA going after a guy who could go two ways in Davis, the 5th DB commit in the class of 2026, the top 30 in the state of Colorado, right? So they're going after some of the best players in the Western region in their own state, beating hometown guys. In Colorado, you think about that, Utah, other Big 12 schools, you're winning against 2 to 3, 4 Big 12 schools, all right? So if you're beating those teams, you're thinking, all right, how does UCLA battle? You got to beat those Western region Big 12 schools, the Utahs, Colorados, Arizonas, ASUs, and the Bruins are doing that at positions of depth. This is what Greg Biggins has to say, 24/7 Sports national recruiting analyst. Two-sport, two-way standout, talented hooper, athleticism, pops off, could play receiver or safety at the next level, but his upside, according to Greg Biggins, is where he thinks his upside is the highest. So there's still potential for somebody like a Davis to come in and make a significant impact on one or both sides of the football. But the upside's at safety, and with UCLA in a full transition on the defensive side of the ball, outside the defensive coordinator spot, hey, you go get athletic guys who can make plays and make players hurt, right? You go have a downhill safety, just make plays. That's what the Bruins got. 6'1", 190. If he builds, he gets stronger. Could be somebody with that athleticism that could be a dominant force in years to come. Greg Biggins goes on to say as well, a lot of range and pass defense, good ball skills, and a great job high pointing the football, is physical, and is an excellent open field tackler. How many times have we seen in recent, modern, crazy UCLA history, they just can't make an open field tackle prior to the last couple of years defensively? Too many times. Well, if he can be one of those guys and UCLA prioritizes wrapping up, who can make plays on the football? Because as much as UCLA didn't necessarily get a pass rush last year, one of the best things the defense did a couple of years ago under D'Anton Lynn was force a lot of turnovers. What did Kaika Malloy, who was on that staff, want to do? Generate more pass rush for sure, more pressure, but they need to force a lot more turnovers. Get the ball back to Tina Sunseri. Steal the ball away, all right? Because sometimes even the worst defenses in terms of stats, if they can force a lot of turnovers, can change the game in your favor. I'm not sure what this defense is going to bring from now in the future, but a focus is who can make plays in the secondary, who can hit hard, who can make great reads in the linebacker room, which the Bruins have to replenish after losing a lot of talent to the NFL the last couple of years, and then how can they get physical up front? 3 levels that the Bruins are slowly building, definitely in the secondary, slowly on the D-line, and they're working on it in years to come at the linebacker positions, all right? So huge for UCLA, still get a Toray Davis to commit on a Saturday, according to 24/7 Sports and Brandon Huffman, yet the Bruins are coming through and getting the job done. Despite some bad news earlier at the end of the week, the Bruins come through with still a recruiting dub to stay in the top 15 and maybe at the last minute steal a top 10 spot in the final class of 26 recruiting rankings. So a lot of changes with early signing day, late signing day, flips, commitments, decommitments, NILs, overall recruiting with revenue sharing. So many things can change. But the Bruins, I think, are managing this so much better than they did in years previous under Chip Kelly and are making waves with how they've jumped onto the national recruiting scene in just the last month or so. Crazy. Absolutely bonkers. But it's all great job and great work by DeShaun Foster and staff. So get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.